It all started with a single shout, "Don't eat that!" A cry from a homeless boy that saved a billionaire's life. But what that boy revealed next would uncover one of the darkest secrets in the world. His name was Eli, the son of a scientist who vanished under mysterious circumstances. And the man he saved? A billionaire named Robert Slate, the very person unknowingly tied to his father's disappearance. When Robert discovers that the boy carries inside his mind the key to exposing a powerful secret society known as the Inner Circle, their lives collide in a race against time, a chase filled with betrayal, sacrifice, and truth buried in code. And as the world stands on the edge of chaos, one question remains: would you risk everything? Your safety, your future, even the truth itself, to set the world free? Because sometimes it takes the smallest light to end the darkest night. Welcome to BrainFuel, where stories ignite your mind and awaken your purpose. Here, every tale challenges what you believe, and every ending leaves you stronger. If you love stories of courage, redemption, and the power of truth, you're in the right place. Because this isn't just storytelling, it's fuel for your mind and fire for your soul. Don't eat that. The scream tore through the elegant restaurant like a lightning bolt splitting the air. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Forks froze midair. The clinking of crystal glasses stopped. Even the soft jazz playing in the background seemed to hold its breath. All eyes turned toward the source of the voice, a small, dirt-streaked boy standing near the grand entrance, breathing hard, his face pale and terrified. He couldn't have been more than 10 years old. His oversized hoodie hung off his bony frame, and his shoes were torn at the front, exposing bruised toes. The security guards, tall and muscular in black suits, immediately rushed toward him. One of them grabbed the boy by the arm. "Hey, what are you doing here, kid?" The guard barked, his tone sharp enough to slice the silence in half. But the boy didn't even look at him. His wide eyes stayed locked on one man, sitting near the center of the restaurant, the man he had just screamed at. That man was Robert Hainsworth, one of the wealthiest and most feared businessmen in the country. A self-made billionaire with a reputation for being ruthless in business and cold in emotion. The kind of man who never got interrupted, especially not in public. Robert's silver watch gleamed under the light as he slowly lowered a spoon, the golden soup dripping back into the bowl. His face remained calm, but his eyes, piercing gray and sharp, studied the trembling boy with quiet authority. The entire restaurant seemed to lean in, waiting for what would happen next. Robert's deep voice broke the silence. "What did you just say?" The boy swallowed hard, his voice shaking but desperate. "Please, sir, don't eat that. It's poisoned." Gasps filled the air. A woman at a nearby table covered her mouth. A waiter dropped a tray of glasses, shattering them across the marble floor. For a moment, nobody moved. Robert blinked slowly, almost amused. Then, in a tone that was both mocking and dangerous, he said, "Poison? In my restaurant?" His bodyguards tightened their grip on the boy. One of them hissed, "Should we take him outside, sir?" Robert raised his hand slightly, signaling them to wait. He was intrigued now. "No, let's hear this explanation." The boy's lip quivered. His voice came out in bursts. "I saw him, sir. The waiter. He poured something into your soup. I swear I saw it." The entire restaurant turned toward the waiter standing behind Robert's chair. The man froze, his face pale as chalk, his hands trembling as he clutched the serving tray. "Sir, I didn't do anything," the waiter stammered, voice cracking under pressure. "The kid's lying. He's just some street rat trying to cause trouble." Robert leaned back in his chair, studying the waiter. The man's forehead glistened with sweat. His voice shook more with each word. Something wasn't right. "Interesting," Robert said quietly. "A homeless child walks into one of the most secure restaurants in the city, screams that my food is poisoned, and you start sweating before I even question you." The waiter froze completely, his lips trembling. One of the guests whispered to another, "Could it actually be true?" Another voice added, "That kid looks terrified. Why would he lie?" The tension in the room grew heavier, pressing down like a storm cloud ready to burst. Robert finally stood up. He was tall, commanding, and calm, yet his presence filled the entire room. "All right," he said, "we'll settle this right now." He gestured toward the restaurant manager, who came rushing over, panicking. Sir, I'm so sorry about this disturbance. Quiet, Robert interrupted. Bring me a chemical test kit from the kitchen, now. Within moments, the head chef arrived, carrying a small portable kit the staff used for food safety checks. Everyone watched as Robert dipped the testing strip into the bowl of soup. The seconds ticked by painfully slow. Then the color changed. Bright purple, the sign of deadly contamination. A collective gasp rippled through the restaurant. The chef's face turned pale. The waiter dropped to his knees, shaking uncontrollably. Call the police, Robert said coldly. His voice was ice. And make sure this man doesn't leave the building. 2 guards seized the waiter instantly. The man began to cry. I didn't mean to. They paid me, please. They said they'd kill my family if I didn't do it. Robert's jaw tightened. He didn't respond. He just turned to the small boy, the one who had screamed. The boy was still standing near the door, trembling, unsure if he'd done the right thing. His eyes darted nervously between the billionaire and the guards holding the sobbing waiter. Robert walked slowly toward him. Every step echoed against the marble floor. People watched in total silence, expecting anger, punishment, something brutal. But Robert did something no one expected. He stopped in front of the boy, looked down at him, and asked softly, What's your name, son? The boy blinked in surprise. Eli Parker. Robert nodded slightly. Eli Parker, he repeated, as if memorizing it. You just saved my life. Eli looked up confused. I just didn't want you to die, sir. A murmur spread across the room. Some people clapped quietly. Others were too shocked to react. Robert gestured to his guards. Let him go, he said firmly. This boy deserves a seat, not a cell. The guards released their grip immediately. Eli rubbed his arm, still shivering from fear. Robert turned to the chef. Get him something to eat. Anything he wants. On me. Eli's eyes widened. You don't have to, sir. Robert smiled faintly for the first time that night. You saved me, kid. I insist. As Eli sat down at a corner table with a steaming plate of food, the billionaire returned to his seat, still shaken but grateful. The police soon arrived and took the trembling waiter away. Reporters were already gathering outside, their cameras flashing through the restaurant's glass doors. But Robert ignored them all. His focus was on the boy who had screamed 3 words that changed everything. In that single moment, the mighty billionaire realized something he hadn't felt in years: humility. Because sometimes it's not another rich man who saves your life. It's a hungry, barefoot boy with nothing to lose, except his courage to speak the truth. The restaurant was in chaos. After the shocking test revealed the soup was poison, voices rose like waves crashing in confusion and fear. Some guests backed away from their tables, whispering. Others pulled out their phones to record, their curiosity outweighing their manners. The atmosphere that had once felt elite and exclusive now felt suffocating. The chef stood frozen, pale and sweating. The guards tightened their hold on the trembling waiter, who was still trying to explain himself. The scent of garlic and herbs that once filled the air was now overpowered by tension and disbelief. Robert Hainsworth, the billionaire everyone feared, respected, and envied, remained standing at the center of it all, completely silent. His gray eyes moved from the soup to the waiter, and finally to the small boy sitting quietly in the corner, still shivering but alert. Everyone waited for Robert to explode. He was known for his temper, for firing executives with a single sentence, for suing competitors into ruin. But right now he was calm, too calm. He finally spoke, his voice low but sharp enough to slice through the noise. Lock the doors. The restaurant manager hesitated. Yes, sir. I said lock the doors, Robert repeated. No one leaves until I get answers. The guards obeyed. The sound of the heavy doors clicking shut sent a chill through everyone. This wasn't just a dinner anymore. It was an investigation, and Robert was the judge. The waiter began to cry. Sir, please. You don't understand. I was forced to do it. Robert's gaze turned cold. By who? The man shook his head violently. I don't know. I just got a call. They told me they'd hurt my wife if I didn't follow instructions. Who are they? Robert demanded. The waiter stuttered, barely able to form words. I don't know, sir. A voice on the phone said to wait until the soup was served to you and then pour this packet inside. They promised I'd never get caught. Robert's jaw clenched. And yet, here we are. He stepped closer. What was in the packet? The man's lips trembled. I don't know. I didn't open it. I just did what I was told. Please don't let them hurt my family. Robert looked toward his chief of security. Find out who this man is. Track every call he's received in the past 24 hours. I want names. The guards nodded and left the room with the waiter, who was still sobbing as they dragged him away. Now only the soft whimpers of the frightened guests remained. Robert turned to Eli again. The boy flinched slightly when Robert's eyes met his, unsure whether he was about to be thanked or blamed. Robert approached slowly, his polished shoes tapping softly on the marble floor. Eli, he said quietly, how did you know to stop me? The boy hesitated, his hands twisting in his lap. I wasn't supposed to be here, sir. I sleep near the back alley of this place. Sometimes the chefs throw out food, and I eat what's left. Tonight, I saw that man, the waiter, outside. He wasn't from here. I know all the faces at work here. He was new. He looked nervous. Robert listened carefully, his expression unreadable. Eli continued. He kept checking over his shoulder, and when he went inside, I followed him through the kitchen door. I thought maybe he'd drop something I could eat. But then I saw him pour something into your soup when no one was looking. I didn't know what it was, but his face, it scared me. So I ran here and yelled. His voice broke a little. I didn't mean to cause trouble, sir. I just didn't want you to die. The entire room fell silent again. Even the guests who had been whispering moments ago were now staring at the boy with softened eyes. Robert's stern face didn't change for a moment, but deep inside, something shifted. This child, who had nothing, no family, no home, no safety, had risked everything to save a stranger, a billionaire who lived in luxury, while he begged for scraps. Robert finally said, You saw all that and no one else noticed? Eli nodded. People don't really look at me, sir. They just walk past. Those words hit Robert like a stone to the chest. People don't really look at me. How many times had he done the same? Ignoring the faces of the poor, the hungry, the desperate, thinking their lives were too small to matter. The police arrived 20 minutes later. Cameras flashed outside. Reporters yelled questions through glass, but the guards kept them back. Inside, detectives spoke to the chef and took samples of the poisoned soup as evidence. One officer approached Robert. Sir, we've confirmed the substance is highly toxic. A few sips would have been fatal. You were very lucky. Robert nodded slowly. Not lucky, he said, glancing at Eli. Protected. The officer followed his gaze and smiled faintly. Looks like your guardian angel's a brave one. Robert said nothing. He simply watched the boy eat quietly from a plate the chef had brought him, a simple meal of rice and stew, but Eli ate it like it was a feast. He hadn't eaten in days. Later, when things settled, Robert sat across from Eli again. The boy avoided his eyes at first, clearly uncomfortable sitting across from a man whose shoes probably cost more than a year of his life on the streets. Eli, Robert said softly, were your parents... Eli's spoon stopped. His eyes dimmed. My dad used to work here. Well, not in this restaurant, but one of yours. He was a cook. There was an accident a few years ago. The place caught fire. He didn't make it. Robert's face hardened slightly. What was his name? Daniel Parker. Eli said quietly. For a brief second, Robert's composure cracked. His eyes widened. That name! He remembered it. Daniel Parker was the man who once saved his restaurant from an explosion, running back inside to pull out 2 staff members before the building collapsed. Robert had never forgotten that act of courage. And now, sitting before him was his son. Robert leaned back slowly, lost in thought. Fate had an eerie way of circling back. A father saved his restaurant, and years later, the son saved his life. He looked at Eli with new eyes, no longer as a ragged street boy, but as a living echo of a man he once admired. As the night deepened, Robert made a silent promise to himself. He didn't yet know how, but this boy would not go back to the streets. Not after what he had done tonight. For the first time in years, the billionaire felt something genuine stirring in his heart. Something he hadn't felt since his early days before money hardened him. Gratitude. And maybe redemption. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cars outside painted streaks across the restaurant's tall glass windows. Cameras clicked. Reporters shouted questions, and onlookers pressed their faces against the glass, desperate to catch a glimpse of the billionaire who had almost been poisoned. Inside, the chaos had begun to settle. The once luxurious dining room was now a crime scene. White evidence markers dotted the floor. Officers carried the poisoned soup away carefully, their gloves gleaming under the spotlights. The air was heavy with tension, fear, and something else, disbelief. Robert Hainsworth sat silently, his fingers clasped together, staring down at the empty chair where he had almost died minutes ago. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel powerful. He felt fragile. Across the room, Eli sat at a small table. He looked out of place amidst the marble floors and golden lights, like a shadow in a room full of luxury. He was still shaking, unsure if he had done something right or terribly wrong. He had never spoken to a man like Robert before, let alone interrupted one's dinner. But what scared him more was what would happen next. Would they throw him out? Call him a liar? Punish him for shouting in a place he clearly didn't belong? He kept his eyes down and focused on the plate of food Robert had ordered for him, a plate of rice and warm stew. It was the first proper meal he'd had in days. But even now, as the smell tempted his empty stomach, he hesitated before taking a bite. That's when he heard a voice behind him. "Eat, Eli." He turned. Robert was standing there, holding 2 cups of hot cocoa. For a moment, Eli thought he was dreaming. A billionaire serving him cocoa? Impossible. Robert placed 1 cup on the table and sat down across from him. "You look like you could use something warm," he said simply. Eli blinked. Thank you, sir. But I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause all that trouble." Robert tilted his head, studying the boy. "Trouble?" He gave a faint, dry laugh. "You saved my life, kid. If that's trouble, I'll take it any day." Eli looked down, embarrassed. I didn't want anyone to die. My dad always said, if you see something wrong, you have to speak up, even if you're scared." Robert leaned back, taking in the boy's words. For years, he'd heard motivational speeches, business advice, and expensive consultants, but not once had anyone spoken something that simple, that real. He smiled faintly. "Your dad sounds like a wise man." Eli's face fell. He passed away a few years ago. Robert's expression softened. "I'm sorry." Eli nodded, his voice small. "He worked in one of your old restaurants. The one that burned down." Robert froze. He remembered. The fire. The smoke. The chaos. One man had run back inside that night. Daniel Parker. Robert's mind flashed back to that night years ago. He'd been standing outside, helpless, as the fire consumed everything. People were screaming. Flames licked the sky. And Daniel Parker had gone back in twice. Once to save a trap cook, and again to grab the safety gas valve that prevented an explosion. Robert had always wanted to thank him, but Daniel never made it out the second time. And now, sitting across from him, was his son, the same boy who had just risked his life to save his. Robert exhaled slowly. "Daniel Parker," he whispered, "your father was a hero." Eli looked up, surprised. "You knew him?" "Knew him," Robert said quietly. "He saved my entire business. Without him, I wouldn't be here today." The realization hit them both at the same time, how life had brought them full circle. The son of a man who had once saved Robert's restaurant had now saved his life. Eli looked at the cocoa in his hands, unsure what to say. He would have liked to hear that, he murmured. People forgot about him after the fire. Wheat lost everything after he died. Mom got sick. We couldn't afford rent. Then his voice cracked. She didn't make it either. Robert's heart tightened. The boy's words were raw, honest, and far too heavy for someone his age. "I'm sorry, Eli," Robert said softly. No one that brave should be forgotten. And no child should have to live like you have. Eli shrugged weakly. It's okay. I just try to survive. I pick up bottles, help at shop sometimes. I sleep wherever I can. Robert looked around the restaurant. The chandeliers, the polished tables, the waiters still whispering in the corner, and he suddenly felt ashamed. He had spent millions decorating his world with luxury, yet a boy who saved him didn't even have a blanket to sleep under. He turned to Eli again. You said you sometimes come here for food? Eli nodded. Yeah, sir. The cooks throw leftovers out back. They're nice sometimes. They let me wash dishes once a week if I'm lucky. Robert clenched his jaw. The world outside his office windows, the world of kids like Eli, was something he had ignored for far too long. He sighed deeply and leaned forward. Eli, do you know what most people would have done in your place tonight? The boy shook his head. They would have stayed quiet, Robert said. They would have watched, too scared to say a word. But you spoke up. You risked getting arrested, beaten, humiliated, just to save someone you didn't even know. Eli's eyes shimmered with a mix of fear and pride. I was scared, sir, but I thought if I don't say anything and something bad happens, I'd never forgive myself. Robert smiled, a genuine, rare smile. That kind of courage is something even grown men don't have. Eli looked down, embarrassed again. I don't know about courage, sir. I just did what I thought was right. Robert leaned back, studying him quietly for a moment. Eli, he said at last, how old are you? 14, sir. Maybe 15. I'm not really sure anymore. Birthdays don't mean much when you're on the street. Robert's eyes softened again. That changes tonight. Eli frowned. Sir, you're not going back out there, Robert said firmly. You saved my life, and you deserve better than sleeping in the cold. You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure something out. Eli's mouth dropped open. I can't stay here. I don't belong. You belong, Robert interrupted. You belong wherever your heart and courage take you. And right now, that's here. Eli's eyes filled with tears. He tried to hide. No one had spoken to him like that in years. Like he mattered. For the first time since his parents died, he felt safe. Robert stood up and placed a hand on his shoulder. Rest tonight, Eli. You've done enough saving for one day. As the billionaire walked away, reporters outside were still shouting his name, trying to get a quote. But Robert ignored them all, because in that moment, the man who had everything realized that his life had just been saved by someone who had nothing. And deep down, he knew this night would change them both forever. The night sky outside Robert's mansion was painted in shades of silver and blue. A dozen police cars had finally cleared the restaurant scene, but Robert's mind refused to rest. He sat alone in his massive home office, a room lined with leather-bound books and a view overlooking the glittering city. But tonight, none of it mattered. The wealth, the luxury, the power, none of it felt real anymore. The echo of the boy's voice still rang in his head. Don't eat that. Those words had saved his life. And somewhere deep down, Robert couldn't shake the question that had begun to haunt him. Who wanted him dead? He stared at the untouched cup of coffee on his desk as the door opened quietly. His chief of security, Marcus, walked in with a folder in hand. A scarred veteran with sharp instincts, Marcus had worked for Robert for 10 years and never looked this tense before. We ran the background check, sir, Marcus said, setting the folder down. The waiter's name is Ethan Rowe. Married, 1 kid, no prior criminal record. But we traced a recent payment. $20,000 transferred into his wife's account 3 days ago. Robert's jaw tightened. Who sent it? Marcus hesitated. We don't know yet. The transfer came from an offshore account. Hidden well, but... He flipped open the folder and pointed at a photo of Ethan. He wasn't lying about being threatened. The police found text messages on his phone. Whoever hired him told him they were watching his family. Robert leaned back, rubbing his temples. So, someone used a desperate man as a weapon. Marcus nodded grimly. Yes, sir. And whoever it was knew exactly where you'd be tonight. Robert's eyes narrowed. That dinner was private. Only 4 people knew about it. You, my assistant Claire, the restaurant manager, and me. Marcus exhaled. I've already spoken to the manager. He's terrified, but clean. Claire's next on my list. Robert turned his chair toward the window, the city lights flickering in his reflection. Find out everything you can, Marcus. I want names, motives, everything. Whoever did this, they won't get away with it. Marcus nodded and left quietly. For a long while, Robert sat there in silence, staring at the skyline he once ruled with pride. But tonight, it felt like a reminder that even the tallest towers cast long shadows. Downstairs, in one of the mansion's guest rooms, Eli lay on a bed softer than anything he had ever touched. He had never even slept indoors as comfortably. His stomach was full, his body clean, but his mind was racing. He replayed everything in his head: the poisoned soup, the shouting, the cameras, the police. He could hardly believe he was now inside the billionaire's mansion. The clock on the wall ticked softly, and he turned to see a tray of cookies and warm milk beside the bed. He smiled faintly. No one had cared enough to do something like that for him in years. Still, part of him felt uneasy. Something about what he saw that night didn't sit right. When he looked at the waiter, Ethan, there was real fear in his eyes. Not hatred, not greed, fear. And Eli remembered something else, too. A small detail everyone else might have missed. When Ethan poured the poison, he looked over his shoulder, not toward Robert, but toward the kitchen door, like someone was watching him. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the massive glass windows of the dining hall. Robert was already seated, dressed sharply but with dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't slept. Eli walked in shyly, his hair still damp from a shower. He looked around the room, marveling at the marble floors, the huge chandelier, and the smell of freshly baked bread. Robert looked up from his coffee. Morning, Eli. Sleep well? Yes, sir, Eli said softly. Thank you. I've never slept in a bed that big before. Robert chuckled lightly. Good. You deserve it. There was a pause. Then Robert gestured toward the empty chair across from him. Come, sit. We need to talk. Eli sat down nervously. Did they catch the people who told the waiter to do it? Robert sighed. Not yet, but my team is working on it. Whoever they are, they planned this carefully. They knew everything, where I'd be, what I'd eat, even which seat I'd sit in. Eli frowned. That means someone close to you told them. Robert looked at the boy in surprise. For a kid who had lived on the streets, Eli's mind was sharp. That's exactly what I think, Robert said slowly. But finding out who? He stopped mid-sentence, glancing toward the hallway as Marcus entered. Sir, Marcus said, holding a tablet. You want to see this? He placed the tablet on the table and played a security clip from the restaurant. The footage showed Ethan in the kitchen preparing the soup. Then, just before he poured in the poison, another figure passed behind him, face hidden by a cap. Marcus froze the frame. We enhanced it. Look at this. Robert leaned forward, his stomach tightening. The faint reflection of the person's face showed on a steel pot near the counter. It was Claire, his assistant. Robert's heart sank. That can't be right, he muttered. She's been with me for years. She handled my schedule, my travel, everything. Marcus nodded grimly. Exactly, sir. She knew where you'd be that night. She arranged the dinner. She had access to the restaurant security logs. She's been one step ahead of us all along. Robert stared at the frozen image, disbelief and anger mixing in his chest. Find her, he said coldly. Now. Marcus left without another word. Eli sat quietly, his hands tightening on the edge of the chair. Sir, do you think she wanted to hurt you? Robert sighed. People change when money's involved, Eli. Sometimes, the closer they are, the sharper the knife. Eli looked down. That's scary. Robert nodded. It is. But you, he stopped, looking at the boy. You've seen more of life than most people ever will. You trust your instincts, don't you? Eli hesitated. Sometimes. They're all I've got. Robert smiled faintly. Then keep trusting them. They might save us again. Hours later, Marcus returned with news. Sir, we tracked Claire's phone. She's left the city. She bought a one-way train ticket to Boston using cash. Police are already on it. Robert stood by the window, silent. "So it's true," he muttered. Eli watched him carefully. "Are you okay?" Robert turned to him and smiled sadly. "No, Eli, but I will be, thanks to you." Eli frowned. "I didn't do much." Robert shook his head. "You did everything. You saw what no one else did. You shouted when everyone else stayed silent." He paused, his voice softer now. "And you reminded me that even with all this wealth, I've been blind to the things that really matter." Eli didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. Robert turned back to the city skyline, a storm brewing over the horizon. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Someone tried to take my life, and I'm going to find out why." Behind him, the young boy who once lived in the shadows watched silently, unaware that he had just stepped into a world far more dangerous than the streets he came from. Because the deeper they dug, the more Robert would realize this wasn't just an assassination attempt. It was personal. Rain poured heavily that night, the sound echoing against the tall glass walls of Robert's mansion. Thunder rolled in the distance as flashes of lightning illuminated the dark clouds. Inside, Robert stood before a digital screen, watching the live police feed of Claire's arrest in Boston. She looked nothing like the loyal assistant he'd known for years. Her hair was tied back messily, her eyes wide with panic, her hands trembling as officers cuffed her. Robert clenched his jaw. "Why, Claire?" he muttered under his breath. "You had everything." Marcus turned to him. "She's in custody. Boston PD is bringing her in for questioning. We'll have answers soon." Robert didn't reply. His eyes were fixed on the screen, but his mind was somewhere else. Try to understand why someone so close to him would turn against him. 2 hours later, Claire sat across from Robert in his private interrogation room. She looked exhausted, her mascara smudged, her once confident smile replaced with quiet regret. Marcus stood by the door, arms crossed. Robert's voice was calm, but cold. "I trusted you, Claire. For 10 years, you handled my life, my business, my travel, my family. You knew everything. So tell me, why?" She took a deep breath, her voice shaky. "Robert, I didn't have a choice." Robert leaned forward. "Everyone says that when they get caught." Tears welled in her eyes. "They had my brother. They sent me pictures, him tied up, bruised. They said they'd kill him if I didn't do what they asked." Robert frowned, his anger mixing with confusion. "Who are they?" Claire hesitated, then whispered. "The board, your company's own people. They said you were going to shut down the new expansion project, that it would cost them billions. They wanted you gone before you made official." Robert's eyes widened. "The board of directors?" She nodded slowly. "Not all of them, just 3. They call themselves the Inner Circle. They've been moving company money offshore for years. You were about to expose them, weren't you?" Robert's heart sank. He had suspected financial corruption in his company for months, but he never thought it ran this deep or that it would lead to an attempt on his life. Claire wiped her tears. "I tried to stop them, Robert. I really did. But when they sent me my brother's finger, I couldn't. I just couldn't." The room fell silent. Even Marcus looked away. Robert's tone softened slightly. "You should have come to me. I could have protected you." Claire shook her head, tears falling now. "They said if I told you, they'd kill him before you could blink. I thought maybe I could stall them, but then they forced me to set up that dinner." Robert stood up, pacing slowly. "And the poison?" Claire closed her eyes. "They had someone deliver it to the restaurant's kitchen that morning. I didn't even know who they used until I saw the news." Robert exhaled, his anger fading into exhaustion. "And now, they'll come for you again," she whispered. "You ruined their plan, and now they'll make sure you don't survive the next one." Robert looked at her one last time. "Then we'll make sure they don't either." He nodded to Marcus. "Hand her over to the police. Make sure she's safe until this is over. She's a witness now." Claire looked up weakly. "Robert." He paused at the door. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I never wanted this." Robert gave a small nod and left. Hours later, the rain had stopped. The mansion was quiet again, except for the soft crackle of the fireplace. Robert sat in his study, lost in thought. On the desk beside him lay the file Marcus had prepared, Names, bank transactions, offshore accounts. It was all connected. The men on the board had not only stolen millions from the company, they had tried to erase the one man who could stop them. As Robert flipped through the documents, he heard soft footsteps behind him. Eli peeked into the room. "Sir, you haven't eaten dinner." Robert looked up and smiled faintly. "I've been busy." Eli stepped inside, curiosity in his eyes. "Did they find out who tried to hurt you?" Robert nodded slowly. "Yes, people I trusted. People who smiled in my face during board meetings and stabbed me in the back the moment I turned around." Eli frowned. "That's messed up. You helped them, right?" Robert sighed. "I thought I did. But sometimes power blinds people. It makes them forget who they were." Eli looked down for a moment. "I know how that feels." Robert tilted his head. "You do?" Eli hesitated, then spoke quietly. "The man who was supposed to take care of me. He used to work for a company downtown. One day he got fired. Said some rich people made him take the blame for something he didn't do. He lost everything. Then one night he just left, never came back." Robert's expression changed. "Do you remember his name?" Eli thought for a second. "Yeah, his name was Thomas Reed." Robert froze. That name hit him like a bolt of lightning. Thomas Reed had been one of his company's top engineers. Fired years ago after being accused of leaking project files. But Robert had always felt something off about the whole case. "Eli," he said carefully, "do you know what your last name is?" Eli looked down. "Reed. My full name's Elijah Reed." Robert sat back, realization flooding his mind. The boy who had saved his life wasn't just a random stranger. He was the son of the man his company had destroyed. For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled softly between them. Finally, Robert said quietly, "Your father was a good man. I never believed he was guilty. He tried to expose corruption in my company, too. He wanted to protect people like you." Eli's eyes widened. "You knew him?" Robert nodded. "Yes. And now I understand why you were there that night. Maybe it wasn't luck. Maybe it was fate." Eli's voice trembled. "Do you think my dad knew about these bad people?" Robert looked into the boy's eyes, his tone steady. "He didn't just know. He was the first one who tried to stop them." Eli swallowed hard, emotion tightening his throat. Robert leaned forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Eli, I owe your father everything. And now, I owe you my life. But this isn't over yet. Those men will come again. And this time we fight back." Eli nodded slowly, determination glimmering in his eyes. Outside, the clouds began to clear, the moonlight spilling into the room. Two lives, one rich, one broken, had now become bound by the same truth. The hunted billionaire and the homeless boy shared something deeper than fate. They shared a mission. And together, they were about to uncover a conspiracy that reached far beyond money, power, or revenge. The next morning, Robert woke up before sunrise. For the first time in years, he didn't head straight to his office or his meetings. He went to the guest room, Eli's room. The boy was still asleep, curled up under a thick blanket, his face peaceful in the early light. Robert stood by the door for a moment, watching him. It was strange. In just a few days, this homeless child had done what no billionaire, bodyguard, or doctor could ever do. He'd given Robert something priceless, a reason to care again. By the time Eli came downstairs, Robert was already waiting at the breakfast table with 2 plates of pancakes. Eli blinked. "You cooked these?" Robert smiled. "Let's just say I tried. The chef refused to come in this early, so you'll have to risk it." Eli laughed, a sound that brightened the whole room. "They look fine to me." As they ate, Marcus entered with a folder in hand. "Sir, I have something. We've been digging into the inner circle." Robert's expression hardened. "Tell me." Marcus laid out 3 photos on the table. "These are your men, Richard Dane, Victor Sloan, and Peter Lang. They've been quietly moving assets to shell companies for years. Offshore accounts, fake charities, all of it." Robert studied the faces. He'd trusted them, had dinner with their families. These weren't strangers. They were his friends. Marcus continued. "And there's more. One of their transactions connects to a man named Thomas Reed. Eli's father. Eli's fork froze midair. My dad. Marcus nodded. According to this, Reed discovered their scheme 5 years ago. He tried to warn the board. A week later, he was fired for data theft and disappeared shortly after. Robert's hands tightened into fists. They framed him. Eli looked between them, his eyes filling with confusion and anger. Then, my dad was right. He wasn't a thief. Robert turned to him. No, Eli. Your father was a hero. He tried to stop them before anyone else. Eli swallowed hard, emotion swirling in his chest. Then we have to find him. Robert nodded. That's exactly what we'll do. The day became a blur of strategy and research. Marcus set up a secure operations room in Robert's mansion, walls lined with screens showing financial trails, security footage, and digital maps. Robert sat at the center, focused, determined. But this time, Eli sat beside him, not as a guest, but as a partner. Marcus briefed them both. The Inner Circle's next move is a shareholders' meeting tomorrow. They'll vote to remove you from the company, claiming you're mentally unfit after the incident. Robert gave a humorless chuckle. Convenient timing. Eli leaned forward. Can we stop them? Marcus nodded. Maybe, but we'll need proof. Something that connects them directly to the offshore accounts. Robert rubbed his chin. And if those accounts were set up through internal systems? Eli jumped in. Then there has to be a backup somewhere. My dad used to tell me, every code leaves a fingerprint. Robert's eyes lit up. You're right. Thomas was a coder. He must have left something behind before he disappeared. Marcus began typing rapidly. I'll access the archive from the old servers. Maybe we'll find his trace. Eli watched the code scroll across the screens, fascinated. For the first time, he felt like he wasn't just surviving. He was fighting back. Hours passed. The rain started again outside, tapping against the glass walls. The hum of computers filled the silence until Marcus suddenly stopped typing. Got something, he said. Robert and Eli leaned in. On the screen appeared a string of encrypted messages, hidden deep in the company's old database. Each file was labeled TR Project S. Marcus decrypted one, and lines of text appeared. If you're reading this, it means I failed. The truth is buried beneath our own systems. The board is stealing from the future. Find the S-Vault. Only my son will know the key. Eli's eyes widened. That's his writing. He always signed things with TR. Robert looked at the boy. Do you know what the key might be? Eli thought hard. He used to tell me stories about the stars, about how I was his North Star. Maybe that's it? Marcus entered the phrase North Star into the encryption prompt. The screen blinked. Then, suddenly, files began to unlock one by one. Dozens of financial records, secret communications, and transferred documents filled the display. Proof of everything. Robert stared in awe. He did it. Your father left the evidence to take them down. Eli smiled for the first time that day. He never gave up. But before they could celebrate, Marcus's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, and turned pale. Sir, he said, we have a problem. Someone hacked into our network just now. They're trying to wipe the files. Robert shot to his feet. Who? Marcus tapped the keyboard. It's coming from an internal source, someone close. Then, on the mansion security feed, a figure appeared walking to the front door in a black raincoat. Eli squinted. Who's that? Marcus zoomed in. It was Victor Sloan, one of the 3 board members. Robert's pulse quickened. How did he get past security? Marcus cursed. He must have overridden the access codes. Robert turned to Eli. Stay behind me. Don't move. Moments later, the door to the study swung open, and Victor entered, dripping wet, a gun tucked under his coat. Robert, he said with a chilling smile, I wish it hadn't come to this. Robert's voice was calm but deadly. You tried to poison me, and now you walk into my house. Victor smirked. You should have stayed quiet. The company belongs to people who know how to use it. You were going to ruin everything. Eli stepped forward bravely. You ruined everything when you framed my dad. Victor's eyes darted to him. Your dad! He laughed coldly. So the brat survived. Robert's jaw tightened. You know his father? Victor shrugged. Of course. Thomas Reed was brilliant. Too brilliant. He found our hidden code, so we made sure he disappeared. Eli's voice cracked. What did you do to him? Victor sneered. Let's just say he won't be coming back. Before Robert could react, Marcus lunged forward, disarming Victor and pinning him to the ground. The gun slid across the marble floor. Robert picked it up and pointed it straight at Victor. You're finished. Everything your group built is coming down. Victor spat on the floor. You'll never make it to that meeting alive. Robert's voice was icy. We'll see. Marcus called the police, and within minutes, Victor Sloan was dragged out in handcuffs, cursing as the sirens wailed in the distance. Eli stood silently, shaking slightly. Robert knelt beside him. You okay? Eli nodded. Yeah, but he said my dad's gone. Robert looked him in the eyes. Maybe, but if there's one thing I've learned tonight, it's that your father was always one step ahead. If he left us this trail, maybe he left something more. Eli blinked. You think he's still alive? Robert's gaze turned distant. If I were a man like him, knowing what he knew, I wouldn't die easily. Outside, lightning flashed again, briefly illuminating the city skyline. Robert and Eli stood side by side, not just as billionaire and boy, but as partners in a fight much bigger than either of them had imagined. And as the storm rolled over the city once more, both knew one thing. The real battle had only just begun. The next morning, the city woke up to headlines about Victor Sloan's arrest. Billionaire board member caught in attempted murder plot, screamed the newspapers. Reporters swarmed outside Robert's mansion, cameras flashing, voices echoing through the iron gates. But inside, Robert wasn't celebrating. He sat at his desk with Eli and Marcus beside him, staring at the encrypted files Thomas Reed had left behind. The data they'd uncovered last night was powerful. Proof of corruption, fraud, and attempted murder. But there was something strange. Every document referenced a term they couldn't decode. S-Vault. Marcus frowned. I've searched every record, every company file. There's no S-Vault in any of our systems. Whatever it is, your father hid it well. Eli leaned forward, eyes locked on the screen. Dad always said, if you want to protect the truth, bury it in plain sight. Maybe he left it somewhere no one would think to look. Robert glanced at him. Like where? Eli thought for a moment. Something simple, something personal. Then suddenly it hit him. The old company headquarters. Before you moved everything downtown. Dad used to take me there when I was little. There was a lab on the 12th floor. He called it the Star Room. Marcus nodded slowly. We sealed that building off 3 years ago during renovations. No one's been inside since. Robert stood. Then that's where we start. That night, rain once again fell over the city, cold and relentless. Robert's car rolled through empty streets toward the abandoned high-rise that once bore his company's logo. The building stood silent, its windows dark, its sign faded by years of neglect. Marcus parked near the back entrance and killed the headlights. Security cameras are still running, but they're old. We can move through the east stairwell unseen. Eli zipped up his worn hoodie and looked up at the massive structure. This is where my dad worked. Robert nodded. Yes, he was one of our best minds. I should have listened to him. Eli looked at him. We'll make it right. Robert placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We will. Inside, the building smelled of dust and old memories. Every step echoed through empty halls once filled with laughter and ambition. Faded posters of innovation mottos still hung on the walls. Building tomorrow. Today. Eli ran his fingers along a desk, brushing off a thick layer of dust. It's like time stopped here. Marcus checked his watch. We got about 40 minutes before the system runs its next automatic scan. After that, we'll show up on internal cameras. They climbed the staircase in silence until they reached the 12th floor. The sign beside the elevator read, Research and Development. Robert pushed open the door to a wide corridor lined with glass labs. Most were empty, broken chairs, shattered monitors, scattered papers. But at the far end of the hallway, There was one room still locked tight, its nameplate faint but legible. Star Room. Eli's heart raced. That's it. Marcus scanned the old keypad beside the door. Still functional. Give me a second. He pulled out a small device and connected it to the panel. After a few clicks and sparks, the lock buzzed and the door slowly creaked open. Inside, everything was just as Thomas had left it. Charts of constellations covered the walls. A projector hung from the ceiling, its light long faded. In the center stood a large workstation with a computer that looked ancient compared to modern systems. Robert walked to it carefully. If there's a clue here, it'll be in this. Marcus connected a portable power source, and the monitor flickered to life. The old interface booted up, revealing one folder on the desktop titled Northstar_01. Eli swallowed hard. That's what he used to call me. Robert double-clicked it. A video file opened, grainy, but clear enough to reveal a familiar face. It was Thomas Reed. Eli gasped, "Dad." The man on the screen looked tired but resolute, sitting in that very same room. His voice was steady, though his eyes showed the weight of fear. "If you're watching this, it means they found me or I've run out of time. I try to expose them, but the inner circle is deeper than I imagined. They control everything, the company, the police, the press, but I've hidden the final proof inside the S-Vault." He paused, looking straight into the camera. "Eli, my boy, the S-Vault is in place. It's a person, someone I trusted to guard what I couldn't." Robert and Marcus exchanged tense glances. "His name is Richard Dane." Robert froze. "Richard? He's the chairman of my board." Thomas continued, his voice growing weaker. "If Richard is still alive, he holds a key to everything. But if he's part of them, then he's the one who ordered all of this. Be careful. He knows I'm coming for him." The screen flickered, then went black. Eli wiped at his eyes. He's alive in that video. He knew everything. Robert exhaled slowly. "Richard Dane. I can't believe it. He was my mentor, my friend." Marcus crossed his arms. "Looks like your friend might also be your biggest enemy." Robert paced the room. "If Richard holds the final key, then confronting him is our only option. But we'll need to be careful. He's powerful and paranoid." Eli looked at him with fierce determination. "Then we catch him off guard." Robert smiled faintly. "You sound like your father." As they left the building, lightning split the sky once again. Eli turned to look back at the 12th floor, the faint glow of the projector light, still flickering through the dusty windows, like a signal from the past. "Dad left us the truth," he whispered. "Now we finish what he started." Robert placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "And this time, no one silences the truth." They drove off into the storm, unaware that a black car had been watching from across the street. Inside it, a figure sat in the shadows, speaking into a phone. He found the Star Room. The voice said coldly, "Tell Mr. Dane it's time." The line went dead. Back inside the car, the figure's reflection flickered briefly in the glass. It was Claire. She wasn't in prison anymore, and she wasn't working for Robert. The storm hadn't stopped. It roared through the city like an angry spirit, lightning slicing through the sky as Robert's car pulled up to the Dane estate, a mansion larger and older than his own. Its Gothic stone walls looked like something out of another century, a fortress built for men who had secrets to protect. Robert sat in the car, staring at the glowing windows in silence. Eli sat beside him, restless, his knee bouncing with nervous energy. Marcus checked his gun, though he knew they weren't here for violence. At least, not yet. "You sure about this?" Marcus asked quietly. Robert nodded. Thomas's message was clear. Richard has the key. If he's innocent, he'll help us. But if he's not, he let the rest of the sentence hang in the air. Eli looked out the window. He'll already know we're coming. Robert managed a grim smile. Then let's not keep him waiting. They stepped out of the car, the cold rain instantly soaking their coats. As they approached the entrance, the massive wooden doors opened slowly, revealing a butler with a blank, emotionless stare. "Mr. Dane is expecting you," he said. Robert froze for a moment. "Expecting us?" The butler only nodded and led them through a long marble hallway lined with portraits of old men in suits, generations of the Dane family, each looking more severe than the last. The silence was thick, broken only by the echo of their footsteps. Finally, they reached the study at the end of the corridor. The door opened, and there sat Richard Dane, calm and collected behind a mahogany desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His hair was silver now, but his posture still carried the weight of command. "Robert," Richard said with a smooth, almost fatherly tone, "you look like you've seen a ghost." Robert stepped closer, rainwater dripping from his coat. "Maybe I have." Richard gestured toward the chairs. "Sit, both of you. I assume this isn't a social visit." Robert didn't sit. "You knew Thomas Reed." Richard smirked. "Of course I did. Brilliant man. A bit too curious for his own good." Eli clenched his fists. He wasn't curious. He was murdered. Richard's eyes flicked toward the boy, studying him like a hawk. "And you must be Eli. You've grown. You look just like him." Eli's jaw tightened. "You killed my father." Richard sighed, swirling his whiskey. Such harsh words. "You've been talking to Robert, I assume." Robert slammed his hand on the desk. "Enough games, Richard. Thomas left a message. Said you hold the key to something called the S-Vault." Richard leaned back, expression unreadable. "Ah, so you found it." "Found what?" Robert demanded. "The truth," Richard said quietly. "Or at least a part of it you were never supposed to see." He stood up slowly and walked toward the tall windows overlooking the storm. Lightning flashed, illuminating the deep lines on his face. "Do you know how hard it is to control a world built on greed, Robert? To stop governments, corporations, and tech giants from devouring each other? Someone has to keep balance. Someone has to decide what the public can and cannot know. That's what the inner circle was for." Robert's voice was cold. "To protect power, not people." Richard turned sharply. "No, to protect civilization." Thomas didn't understand that. He thought truth alone would save humanity. But truth without control? It destroys everything. Eli stepped forward. "You call murder control?" Richard looked almost sad. "Your father forced my hand. He was going to leak everything. The files, the experiments, the political ties. Billions could have been lost overnight. Nations would have turned on each other. He didn't care about consequences." Robert's hands balled into fists. "So you killed him?" Richard met his gaze. "I didn't kill him. I only ordered him stopped. But Victor Sloan, that idiot, went too far. When I found out, it was already done." The room fell silent, except for the sound of rain hammering against the glass. Eli's voice trembled with anger. "You talk like you're saving the world, but you're just another coward hiding behind money." Richard smirked faintly, spoken like a reed. Marcus, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. "You said you didn't kill him. Then why did Thomas warn us about you?" Richard hesitated, then poured himself another drink. "Because he found out the one thing even I couldn't control." Robert's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Richard's gaze shifted to Eli. "The S-Vault isn't a person anymore. It's data. And your father hid it. Not in a drive, not in a vault, but in something much more unpredictable." Eli blinked. "Where?" Richard smiled faintly. "In you." The words hit like thunder. Eli took a step back. "What do you mean in me?" "Your father was experimenting with neural encryption," Richard explained. "A way to store classified data in human memory using biosynaptic mapping. It's why he kept you close, why he called you his North Star. The S-Vault isn't a device. Eli, it's your mind." Robert froze. "You're saying he encoded government secrets in his own son?" Richard nodded. "The entire evidence file against the inner circle. Every document, every recording, every formula. Hidden where no one could find it." Eli's face went pale. "That's impossible." Richard smiled coldly. "And yet here you are. You've been carrying it for years, without even knowing. Your father triggered through recurring dreams, images, phrases, things that would surface only when needed. That's why you kept remembering his last words. They were part of the lock." Marcus stepped forward. If that's true, then you've been hunting him all along. Not to protect him, to extract it. Richard's eyes turned hard. I tried to protect him, but others in the circle wanted the data. They wanted power. I couldn't stop them. Now it's out of my control, which means all of us are in danger. Robert moved closer. Danger from who? Just then, a loud crash echoed from downstairs. The butler burst in, his face pale. Sir, they've breached the gates. Richard's expression darkened. They've found us. Robert pulled Eli behind him. Who has? Before Richard could answer, gunfire erupted outside the mansion. Windows shattered as bullets ripped through the room. Marcus tackled Eli to the floor, while Robert dug behind the desk. Richard ducked, shouting, "The circle? They're here for the boy." As the lights flickered, Eli's heart pounded. Everything was spinning. His father's secrets, the betrayal, the sudden chaos. Robert looked at him, determination in his eyes. We're getting out of here, no matter what it takes. Richard tossed Robert a small metallic object, a data chip. Take this. It's the key to unlocking the rest of the memory sequence. Get him to safety, Robert. He's the only one who can finish what Thomas started. Then Richard turned toward the door, grabbing a weapon from his desk. I'll hold him off. Richard. Robert started, but the old man cut him off with a faint smile. Go, before I change my mind. They sprinted toward the back hallway as the mansion erupted in chaos. Flashes of light gunfire, shouting. And as they escaped into the stormy night, Eli glanced back one last time. Through the rain and fire, he saw Richard Dane standing at the window, weapon raised, defending the house that had once stood for everything evil. Now, perhaps, dying for something good. The rain came down harder than ever, pounding against the windshield like 1,000 angry drums. Robert's car tore through the highway, headlights cutting through sheets of water, engine roaring as if running from the devil himself. Behind them, black SUVs followed, their silhouettes barely visible in the storm, but their intent unmistakable. Marcus gripped the steering wheel. We've got 3 cars tailing us, heavily armed. Looks like the inner circle brought their entire security force. Eli sat in the back seat, his breathing uneven. They're not going to stop, are they? Robert turned to him. Not until they get what's inside your head. Eli's eyes widened. You really believe it's true, what Richard said? Robert nodded grimly. I've seen a lot of things in my life, Eli, but that memory sequence your father built, it's possible. Neural encryption is real. You're the living vault. Marcus swerved sharply as bullets cracked the air, striking the back window. They're closing in. Robert reached into the glove compartment, pulling out a pistol. Hold him off for a few seconds. Marcus hit the brakes suddenly. The pursuing cars overshot their target for a split second, just enough time for Robert to roll down the window and fire 2 precise shots. The lead SUV spun out, crashing into the guardrail, sparks flying as metal scraped against asphalt. Eli flinched at the noise. We can't keep this up. Marcus floored the accelerator again. We don't have to. There's an access tunnel half a mile ahead. We lose them there. As they sped toward the tunnel, lightning split the sky once more. For a moment, the entire world was white and soundless. Inside the tunnel, the air was heavy with echoes. The darkness swallowed them whole as the car roared deeper underground. Finally, Marcus pulled into a maintenance alcove and killed the lights. Silence filled the space, except for the soft tick of the cooling engine. Robert turned around, catching his breath. We should be safe for now. Eli leaned forward, trembling slightly. What about Richard? Did he make it out? Robert hesitated. I don't know. Marcus looked at the data chip Richard had handed over, a small, metallic sliver now glowing faintly blue. Whatever's on this, it's important enough to die for. Robert took it carefully, holding it up to the dim light. He said it was a key to unlock Eli's memory sequence. If that's true, we can access the full S-Vault data. Eli frowned. But how? I don't even remember anything. It's not like I can just pull it out. Robert nodded slowly. That's why we need to find a way to trigger it. Your father built a system that would respond only to emotional or sensory cues, things deeply personal. If we can find the right one, it might unlock the sequence. Marcus turned to Robert. You're saying the answer's buried in the kid's memories. Exactly, Robert said. His father left breadcrumbs. Eli rubbed his temples, trying to think. He used to say something to me when I couldn't sleep, every night before bed. Robert leaned in. What did he say? Eli whispered, almost to himself. Follow the North Star. It never loses its way. Suddenly, the blue light on the data chip began to blink faster, reacting to his voice. Marcus blinked. What the hell? Robert placed the chip against his tablet, and the device came alive with a burst of static. Lines of code flashed across the screen before forming a holographic projection, a three-dimensional pattern of stars. Eli's breath caught. That's the night sky. Robert stared. No, it's a map. But not of the heavens, it's a neural map. Marcus squinted. Meaning? It's Eli's brain, Robert said softly. His father encoded the data across memory sectors, each star representing a locked file. And the North Star, that's the central key. Eli stared at the glowing map. So, if we follow the pattern, we'll find the truth, Robert finished. They drove to a safe house on the edge of the city, an abandoned observatory Thomas had once used for research. The old telescope still pointed toward the stars, dust-covered and silent, like it had been waiting for this moment. Inside, Robert connected the data chip to the observatory's main computer. The holographic star map filled the dome, bathing the room in soft blue light. Eli walked slowly into the center of it, the lights reflecting in his eyes. I remember this place, he murmured. Dad brought me here once. He said stars tell stories, if you listen carefully. Robert looked up at the swirling projection. Then let's listen. Eli closed his eyes. As he stood there, faint whispers began to echo from the speakers. Fragments of his father's voice, words stitched together from the data stream. Eli, if you found this, it means the world will soon know the truth. But I couldn't just leave you with secrets. I left you with something greater, the power to choose what to do with them. Eli's eyes fluttered open. Dad? The projection shifted, zooming into one bright star at the center, the North Star. It pulsed brightly, then displayed a hidden video file. Robert clicked it open. The screen flickered, and there was Thomas Reed, standing on the observatory balcony, speaking directly to the camera. They'll say I died a traitor. Maybe that's true, but the real betrayal would have been silence. The inner circle began with hope, but it became greed. I couldn't stop them. So I built the S-Vault to ensure they'd never win. His expression softened. Eli, you were always my light. I didn't want this burden for you, but the truth needed a guardian. When the time comes, you'll have to decide, reveal it all or keep it hidden. Both choices have consequences. Eli wiped his eyes, voice cracking. He knew this day would come. Robert's throat tightened. He didn't just hide the truth in you, Eli. He trusted you to protect it. Then Thomas's image turned serious again. If you're watching this, they're already closing in. Remember the code phrase, Polaris sequence. It will unlock the final protocol. But once it's activated, there's no going back. The video ended, leaving silence so heavy it seemed to swallow the room. Eli stared at the screen, his hands trembling. Polaris sequence. Robert glanced at Marcus. That must be the trigger command. If we enter it, the full S-Vault will open. Marcus looked uncertain. And if we do? Robert exhaled. Then every secret, every classified document about the inner circle goes public. Governments, banks, corporations, all exposed. Eli looked between them. And if we don't? Robert met his gaze. Then the world stays the same. Corruption continues, but you stay safe. Eli's voice was barely a whisper. He wanted me to choose. Marcus glanced at the window, scanning the night sky. We don't have much time. Those men will find us. Robert nodded. It's your call, Eli. Eli stepped forward, looking up at the holographic North Star glowing above him. His father's words echoed in his mind. Follow the North Star. It never loses its way. He took a deep breath and placed his hand on the console. Polaris sequence, he said softly. The computer beeped. Then the entire dome lit up in brilliant light as millions of data files streamed into the sky, uploading into a decentralized satellite network. Eli shielded his eyes. What's happening? Robert smiled faintly. He did it. Your father's truth. It's free. But outside, far beyond the observatory, black helicopters began to rise from the shadows. The night sky burned with light. Data streams shot upward like comets. Thousands of encrypted files racing through satellites across the world. Every secret Thomas Reed had hidden was now breaking free. The S-Vault had been unleashed. Inside the observatory, alarms blared, computers overheated, and sparks flew from the main console. Eli stood in the center of it all, his silhouette glowing in the holographic storm, the reflection of stars dancing across his face. Marcus shielded his eyes. You triggered it. It's sending everything. Robert watched the data flood with awe and fear. He did what his father couldn't. Then boom! The building shook violently as the front doors exploded inward. Dust and smoke filled the air. Through the haze, black-clad soldiers swarmed the entrance, the Inner Circle's private enforcement unit. Their leader stepped forward, face hidden behind a tactical mask. Secure the boy. Kill the rest. Bullets tore through the air. Marcus returned fire, ducking behind a pillar. Robert grabbed Eli, pulling him toward the control room. Go! Marcus shouted, laying down cover fire. I'll hold them. Marcus. Robert started, but Marcus cut him off with a grin. Just go, boss. Finish this. Robert pulled Eli through a side corridor, their footsteps echoing as gunfire roared behind them. The lights flickered, painting the hallways in flashes of red and blue. Eli's breath came fast. We can't leave him. Robert turned sharply. If we stay, his sacrifice means nothing. They burst into the observatory's dome chamber. Shattered glass and glowing data orbs floating midair. Outside, helicopters circle like vultures, searchlights slicing through the storm. Eli's eyes darted to the console. The upload's still running, 67%. Robert checked his gun. We just need a few more minutes. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed through the loudspeakers. Well done, Robert. Robert froze. No, it can't be. From the shadows of the upper balcony stepped Richard Dane. He was alive, but barely. His suit was torn, blood on his sleeve, and yet his eyes still burned with the same cold intelligence. I told you this was bigger than you, Richard said, limping forward. You think you freed the truth, but all you've done is invite chaos. The world isn't ready for this. Robert aimed his pistol. You said that before. And look where it got us. Richard smiled faintly. I didn't come here to fight you, Robert. I came to stop him. He looked at Eli. Eli glared back. You'll have to go through me. Richard shook his head. You don't understand what's inside that data. It's not just corruption. It's everything. Nuclear codes, experimental weapons, the names of agents in every country. If it all goes public, nations will fall overnight. Robert hesitated. He's lying. Richard took another step forward. Am I? Thomas didn't tell you everything, Robert. He built the S-Vault to expose the circle, yes, but also to end it by force. If that data goes live, governments will collapse trying to contain the fallout. Millions could die. Eli looked torn. No, Dad wouldn't. Richard's voice softened. Your father wanted to end corruption, but he created a weapon instead. You can still stop this, Eli. Just abort the upload. Robert shook his head violently. Don't listen to him. He's manipulating you, like he did your father. But doubt crept across Eli's face. The console beeped. 89% complete. Eli, Robert said firmly, stepping closer. Your father trusted you, not him. He believed that truth, no matter how painful, is the only way to rebuild the world. If you stop now, they win again. Richard's voice rose. If you continue, there will be nothing left to rebuild. The sound of helicopters thundered above. Soldiers closing on the observatory, ropes dropping from the ceiling. The storm howled louder, lightning striking nearby towers. Eli looked between the two men, one who had betrayed everything and one who had lost everything. I don't know what's right anymore. he whispered. Robert stepped forward, lowering his weapon. Then do what your father would have done. Follow the North Star. Those words hit deep, the phrase that had defined his entire life. Eli closed his eyes. For a second, the chaos faded, replaced by a memory. He was a boy again, sitting beside his father under the night sky. Thomas's voice echoed softly. When you're lost, look to the North Star. It never lies. Eli opened his eyes, tears glistening. You were wrong, Richard. The world deserved the truth, even if it hurts. He slammed his hand onto the console. Polaris sequence, final transmission. The upload hit 100%. A blinding surge of light burst from the mainframe, flooding the entire observatory. Richard shouted, shielding his face as data waves pulsed through every satellite, every server, every news outlet on Earth. Files began leaking globally, documents, photos, confessions, videos. Within minutes, every screen across the world displayed the same message. The inner circle has fallen. Richard dropped to his knees, whispering, What have you done? Eli stood trembling but resolute. I finished what my father started. Suddenly, a massive explosion ripped to the lower floor. Fuel tanks from a downed helicopter igniting. The structure began to collapse. Flames crawling up the walls. Robert grabbed Eli's arm. We have to go, now. They sprinted through the debris as beams fell around them. Behind them, Richard struggled to stand, his face pale and defeated. Go, he rasped. I can't run. Robert hesitated. Despite everything, he couldn't leave the man who'd once been his mentor. He turned back, dragging Richard's arm over his shoulder. You're not dying here, old man. They made it to the exit as the observatory erupted behind them, the dome collapsing in a fiery roar that lit up the night sky like dawn. Hours later, the storm had cleared. The first light of morning painted the horizon gold. Robert sat on a hill overlooking the ruins, bandaged and exhausted. Marcus had survived, wounded but alive. He stood nearby, scanning radio updates. Every news outlet's running it, Marcus said. Governments are confirming arrests. The inner circle's done. Robert nodded silently, eyes on the rising sun. Thomas Reed changed the world. Eli sat beside him, holding a small locket, his father's. Inside was a photo of them beneath the stars. He didn't just change it, Eli said softly. He gave it a chance to start over. Robert looked at him with quiet pride. So what will you do now, kid? Eli smiled faintly. Keep looking up. Robert chuckled. Good answer. They stood together as the wind rustled through the grass, the last remnants of the storm fading into calm. In the sky above, one star still glowed faintly even in daylight, a beacon of light that refused to fade. Eli looked up and whispered, Thanks, Dad. Far away, in a government control center, analysts tried to shut down the leaks, but the data had already replicated across millions of independent servers. The truth could no longer be erased. And somewhere in the quiet between night and dawn, the words Follow the North Star echoed, not as a warning, but as a promise that truth, once set free, never dies,